Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's Niche Cache Variety Show, where we like to pop up early in the week with a bit of a buffet of Aotearoa sporting topics. Lots to digest from a let's go with weird weekend of Aotearoa sport, where had some wins, had some losses, and it was just all over the place. So we're here to offer our insights and try and make sense of it as best as we can. Prior to this, we have recorded Blackcaps' first test debrief against England. England lost. It kind of sucked, but we spun a good yarn about it. So check that out on the Patreon feed if you are a Patreon. Patreon.com/our niche cache. That's a great way to support us, straight up the guts as well. So not only is there an extra podcast, usually cricket at the moment, it's just the best way to support the niche cache and our content. Patreon.com/our niche cache. Big up to all the Patreon whānau. Hope you enjoy the cricketing podcast as well. Every Monday and Friday evening, we share extra Aotearoa sporting yarns via Substack, the nichecache.substack.com. Sign up to that. And then every Monday and Friday in your email inbox, you get notes, news, and bits and pieces about Aotearoa sport. So that's mandatory. That's Mando, as they say, pretty much just in LA. I think I've heard that one. So that's Mando, is you need to sign up to the email newsletter via Substack. All these links are in the description for this podcast. However you're listening to it, check it out. And of course, we're from the Niche Cache, the niche-cache.com. That's where the big yarns are found. Email is all sorts of extra content, current eventy, newsy bits and pieces, extra podcasts on the Patreon feed as well for the Patreon whānau. So that's basically the Niche Cache menu. It's who we is, it's what we do's, and we start our podcast with Mindfulness Wildcard. I'm feeling the need for mindfulness at the moment. I'm feeling the need for some spiritual guidance, some divinity in my life. Please help me and the listener out with your mindfulness is always comes with a bit of timing. It's always on the nose with regards to whatever energies we are feeling. So I'm curious what you've got for us this week.
Yeah, we'll see if this one fits the bill. I'm not sure it's going to help cope with the Blackcaps defeat or anything like that. But this is from Roman philosopher poet, I guess maybe would be a thing. Our old mate Horace. Which is really not a name you hear anymore these days, is it? You don't really get anyone else called Horace, so he might have been the last of his kind. But he once said, "They change their sky, not their soul, those who rush across the sea."
They change their sky, not their soul, when they rush across the sea.
Basically, yeah. As in, you can you can go wherever, but you can't outrun who you are, or you can't, like, how do you say it? Because I read it in relation to the idea that you can just like escape your problems by going somewhere else or changing your environment or whatever. And it's like you change the environment, but you don't change your soul. Like you're still who you are, whatever. I don't know, if in a negative sense, grief or trauma you might be carrying with you, you're still going to take it with you wherever else you go until you like deal with it or address it. But that also applies to, applies in the opposite sense as well. Everything applies in the opposite sense to everything else. We're like, okay, here we go. Let's bring it back to the Blackcaps. Like the Blackcaps going to England and losing doesn't make them a different cricket team than the team we've seen from them over the last 5 years, sort of thing. Like Kane Williamson didn't score any runs in this innings. He's still Kane Williamson. You know, his skies may have changed. His output in this test match may have changed, but the soul remains the same.
That's good. It's also very poignant because I do have a bit of travel on the cards. So I'm just like thinking to myself, right. what am I escaping from? Is my soul all good? Is it all intact and whatnot? But anytime you mention the sky, I'm always brought back to how ancient civilizations, the Polynesians, as well, how they navigated using the skies and the stars and the magic of the sky and the stars. Because if you take yourself back to years and years and years ago, you'd just be tripping out every night. Like there's shooting stars, there's the auroras and the green lights and the blue lights, then the moon is like super bright at this time, and you're like, what is this? So that's where I went. Anytime you say looking at the sky and looking at the stars, that's where I think that's where my mind goes. And a lot of the navigation tactics as well, using the stars and the guidance of the sky. But I'm not even sure if that was part of the mindfulness.
It's a nice spin-off from it, certainly. I mean, what you just said also was kind of buzzy to me, because I'm thinking about like, it's one thing if you learn in like primary school about lunar cycles and stuff. It's like the moon is this shape today, then it's slowly going to be like closing into a crescent, then it's going to be opening up the other way, and here comes the new moon where it's bigger and brighter than ever, sort of thing. And it's like, if you learn about that as a kid, you almost take it for granted just how like crazy that is to just look at it. Like you see it's the same moon, but it looks different every night, you know. That in itself is kind of like, no wonder so many, pretty much every society started by like worshiping moons and suns and things like astrological things like that, and stars. And it's like, yeah, of course they did. Like when you think about it like that, of course they did. Why wouldn't you? It's bloody amazing.
It is Matariki coming up as well. So big up Matariki. That's the foundations of Aotearoa built under the sky. Let's go with that one. I can't say built on the sky because nothing's built on the sky, but they're built under the sky. Every aspect of Aotearoa life, when you look at the history of the land and the people who found the land, I think the sky and the stars and the moon and all the magic around there played a big part.
As above, so below.
As above, so below. There's a fair amount of waffle there to start the podcast. Big it up to the mindfulness vibes. Let's crack into sport here, Wildcard. We've used half the show on our mindfulness, so we might have to rocket our way through this one. What do you got leading us off? Most important, most funky take you can serve up. What do you got?
Most important, most funky take is that the All Whites are ready. As ready as they're ever going to be, at least. They lost 1-0 to Peru on Monday morning, but it's one of those ones where like the result's not the important thing. We know they're building towards that Costa Rica game, and that Peru match was, I thought, a really nice, really timely bit of preparation. I would even say necessary preparation, because they are a team that has similar physical characteristics to Costa Rica, but also they're like better. Like Peru's just considerably better than Costa Rica. Like that's a really good Peru team. We saw that 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was. And the All Whites got through that match. No one broke a leg or anything like that. Little bit of an injury scare for Winston Reid, but he seemed to be all right in the end. And they only lost 1-0 because of goalkeeping error from Ollie Sale, who has always struck me as the kind of guy who's not going to make the same mistake twice. So you can be like, yeah, that was a bad error. Maybe you don't want to pick him for the Costa Rica game. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, that was a bad error, which is exactly why you know he's not going to make the same mistake again in the big occasion. So I don't necessarily know that swings things. Because of the type of guy he is. Defensively, I thought they were really good, dealt with set pieces extremely well, which is going to be huge against Costa Rica. Couple of shaky moments down their wings, but they recovered pretty well in the middle with their three centre backs. And obviously there were times that could have gone either way. There was a corner kick that was chipped back to the edge of the box and then smashed off the crossbar, which would have been an incredible goal. But like, it's football, like big games, you have to ride your luck to some extent. And if some guy can smash in a half volley like that in the top corner in the Costa Rica game, well, they kind of deserve it. Like if that's what it takes to beat you, then you're in an all right place. Up front, not so flash, didn't really create a whole lot, but I guess the hope is that Costa Rica will be a bit softer in the midfield and at the back and give a bit more room for guys to work with, and that this would have been a good tune-up game for guys like Chris Wood in particular, I think, who, you know, the couple injuries towards the end of the Premier League season, just minor things, but it meant that he didn't get as much game time as he had been playing. So the last sort of 2 to 4 weeks for guys like him who have just ended their season, a little bit short on football. So a good tune-up game for them as well. Also got some interesting selection things. Lydia Ko starting at right back, Ollie Sale starting in goal, Tommy Smith starting in the back three as well. I think all of those were quite interesting. And Matt Garbutt as well getting the game and actually playing, I think, probably the pick of those 4 guys that I mentioned. So a few interesting selection things there with Danny Hayes still working out just the last couple finishing touches. You always have had a nice time of it since returning from like their Pando hiatus, but they haven't actually played a lot of teams that are particularly like World Cup caliber good. So getting the game in against Peru, before you play Costa Rica kind of feels like, well, I mean, first of all, this is the strongest game, that, like the toughest opposition they've played probably since they last played Peru. And also it kind of feels like, when like baseball hitters will be like in the, what do they call it? Like in the box, like the next man up kind of thing. In that little hitters area, and they'll put like the weights on their bat and start swinging back and forth so that they get used to swinging with a heavier bat, take the weights off to face, the bat swings a bit freer. Kind of feels like that for the or boxers training with weighted gloves kind of thing. Feels like that for the All Whites. Play Peru right before Costa Rica is kind of perfect timing, regardless of the result. Would have been nice if they held on for a result, but the like if for a draw, which they were definitely in position to do, but like the important thing is they got what they needed out of that match, and now it's just a matter of like holding the nerves in check ahead of next Wednesday morning, which is going to be massive. That one, Always versus Costa Rica, that's going to be massive.
And it was a very funky atmosphere for that Peru game as well. Lots of Peru fans.
Yeah, 99.9% Peru fans in Spain there.
Yeah, just a good buzz right? for the Kiwis to get in front of. My take here is that the Josephs are also ready. Wildcard.
Yes.
Joseph Manu and Joseph Tapine were the best players on the field of the Raiders' win over the Roosters, and along with guys like James Fisher-Harris, Isaiah Papali'i, Dylan Brown, they are key players for the Aotearoa Kiwis for their upcoming test against Tonga, and they were on fire in that game. As I said, the best players on the ground, which also came with Joey Manu from Tokoroa as the fullback. First game at fullback for the Roosters this season. And he just churned out 33 runs, just a little bit of 33 runs, 288 meters. And this is probably the most ridiculous stat line I've seen covering rugby league. 14 tackle busts and 7 offloads. That's Joey Manu playing fullback, and it doesn't look all that different to James Tedesco playing fullback. So I think there's a strong case now to be made that Joseph Manu should be the Aotearoa Kiwis fullback. And then big it up to Joseph Tapine. I've actually written about Tapine a few times. He's from Wellington, and he is in career best form, as most of the Aotearoa Kiwis, like the top tier, they're all playing the best footy of their careers. And he churned out another 200-meter plus game, 20 runs for 209 meters, which is over 10 meters per run. So like peak Jason Taumalolo, he was having 20 runs over 200 meters. Peak Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, 20 runs over 200 meters. That's kind of what Joseph Tapine is doing every game right now. And he had 5 tackle busts, 3 offloads, and 33 tackles in a winning performance. I believe Joseph Tapine is one of the best middle forwards in the NRL. And if you combine him with James Fisher-Harris, Asafa Solomona, Brandon Smith, Jesse Bromwich, Kenny Bromwich, Isaiah Papali'i, Jared Waerea-Hargreaves, like that is an absolutely monstrous forward pack. And they were fantastic, best on ground in a game full of Aussies. So big it up to those dudes, Tokoroa and Wellington. Nice little regional mix as well. I love it. Big up Aotearoa Rugby League. Drop a stat here, wildcard.
Yeah, how about this one on the Blackcaps' top 4 in that first test at Lords against England? Tom Latham's career test batting average is 41. I'm just rounding them up to the nearest whole number. Will Young, early days, but he's averaging 28 in test matches. Kane Williamson, not early days, averages 53, a very established 53. Incredible. Devon Conway, early days, but he averages 56. 41, 28, 53, and 56. Add those all together. So your average innings when those guys, like the average innings, not the above and beyond, but the average innings for those guys in a completed, completed knocks, no not outs, blah, 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 be 178 runs between the top 4 there. This was a match in which they had 2 completed innings. Like there's no follow on, nothing like that. No sort of short totals to chase in the second innings or anything like that. So add that, like double it, double that number. 356 runs for 8 wickets is about what you would expect from those guys on average. Now, this match was like full steam Stuart Broad, Jimmy Anderson, overcast conditions with a fresh dookie in their hands. We can pretty safely say that the average is probably a bit excessive in that. You knock off a few runs, maybe even knock off a lot of runs from the expectation. But like how many runs is it safe to knock off? I would suggest that what they actually achieved in that test match, which was 50 combined runs for those 8 wickets. Probably a few too many to be comfortable with. You'd expect 350. They put up 50. So 50 runs for 8 wickets between the top 4 batsmen in the team, the best, most reliable dudes in the order. Like, plenty of other things happened in what was a pretty entertaining, like, seesaw kind of test match there. But if you're looking for something decisive in terms of like why the Blackcaps weren't able to get a victory there, I'd suggest maybe don't worry about like Colin de Gronholm, no balls or fluke runouts or anything like that. Maybe you look a little bit closer at the top 4 scoring 50 runs for 8 wickets, and it might be probably the more decisive aspect of that test match.
It's big fans here at the Niche Case of batters batting and bowlers bowling. That's what we tend to focus on. And when the bowlers aren't taking wickets and the batters aren't scoring runs, that's usually why they have lost. Same applies for any cricket team as well. My statistical funk here revolves around Lydia Ko. Solid result of 5th at the US Women's Open. She was as high as 2nd, I think, in the final round. Stumbled a bit at the end. And like Kane Williamson's lack of form, if Kane Williamson's out of form, but he's scored double hundreds in each of the last 3 years, if Lydia Ko is disappointing and she has results of tied 3rd, tied 12th, and 5th, she's doing pretty good. And she wasn't at her best in this tournament, which is a major, the US Women's Open. She did have some, an iffy first round, and she did dip away there in the end of the 4th round. And she wasn't hitting her usual fairways. She wasn't quite at her best, but she finished 5th. And right now, to get into some stats, Lydia Ko has the best putting average on the LPGA Tour. She's 1st for putting average. She is 4th for putts per greens in regulation, which again, fantastic for the putting. She is 1st in sand saves. So anytime she gets into a bunker, she is out of that bunker and in the hole within 2 shots, better than any other player on the LPGA Tour. Rankings, Lydia Ko is 3rd on the CME Globe rankings. She is 5th in total prize money. And the Rolex player rankings are pretty slow to update. So right now she is 4th in the Rolex rankings, which basically means Lydia Ko, I've got her top 3 in the world. Stretch it out, maybe top 5. So again, if Lydia Ko sucks and she is top 5 in the world, that's pretty good, and it's better than any other Kiwi golfing bloke. So shout out Lydia Ko. Really good result on the weekend. 5th at the US Women's Open. Strong run of 3 tournaments. Tied 3rd, tied 12th, and 5th here. And she is still the best. She still has the best short game on the LPGA Tour. Deep in the Mangroves wildcard. Tell us what happened with the old boxing over in Australia.
Yeah, some things did happen. Just quickly throwing it back to something you were talking about last week, and then also from that last thing. I remember I saw on the news last week, there was a thing, I think it was Ryan Fox was hanging out with the Blackcaps or something like that. And the TV news introduced him as New Zealand's top golfer. And I'm like, I don't even know if he's the best male golfer. He's definitely not New Zealand's top golfer. We got a top 5 golfer in the world that we're just talking about there. Like, man, unbelievable. But yeah, also unbelievable some of the stuff that, well, we'll see. I've split it into the good, the bad, and the indifferent from the Kiwi contingent on the NRLWahine card on the weekend on Sunday afternoon. The good was David Nyika. David Nyika fighting a local Australian fella, stepping up on relatively short notice. Karim Matala, who's of Moroccan descent, but is I think an Italian pastry chef or something by trade, they said. Also a pretty good boxer, like fair play to the dude, because he stuck up more of a fight, showed more heart than either of the 2 guys that Nyika's fought in his professional career to date. Gave him 5 full rounds. Nyika definitely cruised in the first 3, tallied up the rounds, and then Matala had a bit of a, went a little bit more risky in the last couple rounds. Probably took the 5th round, I would say. Just because Nyika sort of kept it back in his bag and just made sure he didn't make any mistakes, knew he had the win in there, out there to try build up rounds. Remember, like amateur stuff, you're only really doing 3 rounds at a time. So he's not like this is the longest proper bout that he's really ever had. So he just wanted the rounds in there, and he got them. He was good. He looked nice and convincing. Unanimous decision on the cards. He's 3-0 as a professional cruiserweight. Next step is the Commonwealth Games. We'll try win a third gold medal at those bad boys in a couple months. So that was good. The bad, Junior Fa. Just, man, I don't know what to say. Like, he was a big favorite against Lucas Brown, and he just let his guard down, and was, I don't know, like he copped a heavy shot to the temple, I suppose. They're appealing it, saying it was a dirty shot to the back of the head. I think the first one is kind of touch and go. The second one was not. Like, the second one I thought was a dirty shot. Well, not dirty, accidental dirty, but it was a behind the back of the head kind of thing. Having said that, after the first one, it was game over. Like, it was just if it wasn't that shot that cleaned him out, it was another shot that was going to clean him out. Junior Fa just wasn't there. And honestly, the fight should have ended after the first knockdown. He was in no state to continue. But yeah, that was bad. I don't know if, like, he'd been 462 days out of the ring since the Joseph Parker fight. I don't know if that was an issue. He had COVID 2 months ago. I don't know if that was something that was lingering, or maybe he was like, this is the first time, the best guy he's fought in his career yet, in which he was the favorite, because obviously he was the underdog against Joseph Parker. This is the first time he had like favorite expectations against a good fighter, and maybe that could have been a factor. I don't know. Or maybe like it's just the fact of the matter is he just got caught by a heavy punch, and he wouldn't be the first boxer in heavyweight history where everything changed, like all expectations out the window on the basis of one big punch. Like, it's kind of the story of I mean, Lucas Brown could tell you all about that, because that's what happened to him against Paul Gallen of all people. One big punch, and suddenly you're expected to dominate this dude, and you're on the canvas peeling yourself up. So not good from Junior Fa, and we'll see how that challenge goes, because that could be a career saver if he can get that one through. But the other one was the indifferent, Hemi Ahio. So Hemi Ahio fought Christian Ndizi Soye, I think is, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's his name. He's a Cameroonian fella who fights out of Australia. Was coincidentally supposed to fight David Nyika at the last Commonwealth Games in the quarterfinals, but then he and about 8 other Cameroonian athletes went AWOL from the athletes village, disappeared. He never made it to his way in, and he's popped up back since fighting professionally in Australia. So I guess he never left. I don't know. Theirs was like an interesting first round where both guys were really kind of slugging it, and it had potential to be a really good fight. Like, the shots landed on both sides, both guys looking to be nice and heavy. Good, like Hemi Ahio, I'd say probably had the best of the first round. And it looked like he would be the guy who could cause more damage from some of those shots. But it was a pretty open, enjoyable fight. And then the first round ended, and so did the fight. Like, Ndizi Soye never came back. He had an elbow injury. Did seem to be favoring it a little bit towards the end of the round. And his fellas throw in the towel. They're like, nah, he's injured. That's it. So just like Hemi Ahio didn't get to produce a stoppage, didn't get to go past the first round. He got the win. So it's much better, obviously, than the scenario Junior Fa found himself in. He moves to, I think, 19-0 as a pro, but indifferent there, because we just didn't really get to just the anticlimactic way that fight went down. So the good, the bad, and the indifferent. From there is some, a bit of all over the place with the boxing on Sunday. Maybe like pick your positives and stick with that. I don't know.
Tough sledding for City Kickboxing at the moment as well, because Blood Diamond, his fight got scratched. His second UFC fight. I think it's meant to go down this weekend. That is scratched. So they've had a couple of losses in the boxing arena, and Blood Diamond's UFC fight is now on hold. So we'll stay tuned what happens there. Deep in my mangroves, we're just going to do a quick wrap-up of some NRLWahine matters. The Black Ferns are playing right now. They've obviously, they're not playing right as we speak, but they're playing some rugby against some other teams. And interested to see how they go. Obviously, big year for women's rugby, and I am tracking it, and I do want to view them on the same playing field as all these other teams, which I believe is interesting, because in the same way we are told that the All Blacks are the most important team in Aotearoa, and it feels genuine, it's kind of automatic. Like, we're being told that the Black Ferns are automatically the most important Wahine sports team in Aotearoa, and I just don't think that's true. So I am kind of watching just everything around that. Obviously, their situation right now, the thing I was realizing, that's big on the positive energy. There's some good characters. They're playing rugby. There's a new vibe. There's new buzz. Wayne Smith's the coach and all that shit. And it just makes you think, like, it must have been pretty poisonous before. Like, if this is a big, like, reset moment a la English cricket, it must have been absolutely terrible before to get to where we are now. So I am tracking the Black Ferns. I am interested in what they're doing, especially in the context of some of this other Wahine sport. The White Ferns have a new coach, this Aussie bloke by the name of, I think it's Ben Sawyer. He was an assistant coach with Australia, so he's coming into the White Ferns mix. And the most interesting thing to follow there is what players he resonates with in the New Zealand cricket setup. Of course, the White Ferns contracts that were recently big hoopla about it, go read about it. Those are the contracts, and those are the players that are currently in White Ferns training camps. Those are the players who receive the quote-unquote high-performance training, the gym work, the net sessions, the technical stuff that New Zealand cricket provides for them. What I'm interested in, if Sawyer selects players from outside that contracted bubble, because he might realize that the best players don't actually have contracts, and he wants the best team on the park, but he hasn't decided who gets the contracts. That's the New Zealand cricket high performance unit. So there might be, it's not that I'm just curious how that plays out over the coming months. And I think he's got a 2-year deal. So we'll learn a lot about White Ferns cricket there. They are preparing for the Commonwealth Games, as are the Black Sticks women. And that's interesting. Obviously, the Black Sticks women, they just played a series against Australia, didn't win games, drew and lost games. It was quite competitive, though. And those are interesting because the Commonwealth Games only colonized nations, which weakens the pool of teams. So in theory, they should perform well. If they don't win medals, like if the White Ferns and Black Sticks don't win Commonwealth game medals, that's a key indicator that they are still very early in this cycle. We do have NRLWahine signings as well. And come back to the Black Ferns, this is interesting because I think there's far better professional systems in rugby league for women than rugby union. And there are women such as Gail Broughton, 7 superstar. She is signed to the Parramatta Eels, probably going to play fullback for them. She has made the move from rugby union in Aotearoa to NRLWahine. The Broncos have re-signed Amber Hall and Lavinia Gould. They are Broncos veterans at this stage. We also have the Knights. They have re-signed Autumn Rain Stevens-Daly, who I believe played rugby union for Bay of Plenty at some stage as well. And the Gold Coast Titans have signed Madison Bartlett from the Dragons. So Hall and Gould, they've been with the Broncos the whole time. Autumn Rain Stevens-Daly, she was with the Knights last season, and she is playing fullback for the Knights in the New South Wales competition right now. Gail Broughton is playing fullback for the Mounties team in the New South Wales competition right now. And Madison Bartlett, she moves from the Dragons up to the Titans. So that's a bit of a signings tracker there. And they are the big Wahine sports things that I'm following and tracking right now. Question time here, Wildcard. Just quickly, tough weekend for Aotearoa sport. What was one positive that you found from the Aotearoa sporting beat that just put a smile on your dial, tickled your toes?
Yeah, so I've already found some positives in the all white stuff earlier on, and in David Nyika, so I won't mention those ones. I'm going to go a little bit out of the box with this one, and I'm going to say a footballing result that happened at the Ciudad de Panama, Estadio Romel Fernandez Gutierrez Stadium. Panama 2, Costa Rica 0. This was a Nations League game, and it was a rotated Costa Rica team. They didn't really play most of their big dogs, trying to keep they've got quite an old team. A lot of their key players are in their mid-30s. Didn't really want to overexert those guys, but they lost 2-0 away to Panama. And I thought I watched the game. I thought it looked a very similar tactical setup from Costa Rica to what they've been doing in other things, which was quite enlightening to be able to watch a full 90 minutes of them and fill in some of the gaps in my scouting stuff from earlier. So I will write about this later in the week. They did since then, they picked a stronger team and they beat Martinique 2-0 in their second Nations Cup game. That's Martinique, though. I don't know where they're ranked in the thing, but I'd imagine they're somewhere close to. I doubt they're that much better than some of the Oceania teams that the All Whites have played recently. So, interesting times there. Like Costa Rica, not quite at their best in that. A rotated team, sure, but also like it's not a great result. And these are their only 2 warm-up games. Compare that to the All Whites who have just played Peru, who are a probable World Cup team, who are also challenging for the exact same thing as Costa Rica as the All Whites are. They're trying to win an intercontinental playoff game against either Australia or UAE. That's a much more serious preparation game. I like the signs there. It's good stuff from the All Whites. Throwing a question back in your direction. Nathan Brown, Warriors coach, or potentially not Warriors coach much longer. What's doing?
It just feels good. Like that's just I feel good. This feels good because it kind of brings an end to whatever the fuck has happened over the last 2 years, right? Like,
yeah,
nothing has gone the Warriors' way. A different way to slice the disadvantage. I've been big on making the excuses for the Warriors. No team has had to travel to New Zealand to play the Warriors. That has not existed. Yep. So it's like tough on the Warriors. So like any Australian complaining, as I always say, any Aussie complaining about the Warriors, how about we just have a level playing field first? But I do like the fact that Nathan Brown will not be the coach, assuming the reports are correct, because it brings a close to this era. And I think we should all just wipe this era aside. I was going to say something else more along with flush the dunny, but we should wipe aside this pandemic era for the Warriors. It's been terrible. And of course, they are cursed. So we learn about the curse here because Nathan Brown couldn't help the Warriors. Pete O'Sullivan left the Warriors. Phil Gould came and left the Warriors. Like, all these people have come to help the Warriors. They don't do shit. The club's cursed. So I think the best way to just rejig the juju is get back to Aotearoa, get back to some foundations, and just churn out the mahi and see what happens. But I am enjoying how this era is coming to a close. It involves a lot of losses. It involves some more Warriors turmoil, but I think we are seeing a apex of Warriors curse drama, and anything that comes after the apex is good. You know, you want to have a moment of crisis that doesn't feel like crisis because the club's so far disadvantaged. But I think moments like this are going to rejig how the Warriors are built in Aotearoa. I could go on and I could waffle on more wildcard, but I'm just happy that we are seeing this cycle come to an end, I think is what I'd like to say. And I think we should all embrace the ending of cycles because it just means there's a new cycle coming up. And for the Warriors, that usually means more cursed business. But us as individuals, a new cycle means a lot of fresh energy. Musical jam. Just want to big up Polly Hill, Aotearoa artist. She's got a new song, Pulse, produced by Dera Milan. And it's a good jam. Polly Hill is probably among my favorite Aotearoa artists right now. Always makes cool, funky music. So shout out to her and Dera Milan for their new song, Pulse. Musical jam for yourself, Wildcard.
The new Angel Olsen album is fantastic. I might be my favorite thing she's done. Yeah, like I don't know. It's called Big Time, and it's very like it's got a little bit of like a psych folk thing going on there, which hasn't always been. It's like thrown back to some of her earlier albums, but also in a more electric way. It's very, very cool. Great songs. Loved that one. Also dig like the Tedeschi Trucks band's got a new one, which is a little bit more like ambitious jammy stuff. It's a band where I've always liked their live stuff, that stuff that I've stumbled across in the past, and not necessarily loved their albums. So them like shooting for the moon there with like, this is the first part of I think a 4-part a 4-part album cycle, like they're releasing one a month, and it's based on like lunar cycles as well, keeping the theme of the podcast going. That was pretty cool. I think there's a new Drive By Truckers album as well, and a Charlie Musselwhite album. Like he was old. He was like a one of the rare like authentic white guy blues artists from the '60s who's still trucking along, almost 80 years old. And I listened to it, and I actually thought that was cool. That's a good album. Like that's what blues in 2022 should sound like. A grizzly fellow with a harmonica and doing the business. So there we go. Like, a few good tasters there.
What is
plenty of good tunes going around at the moment, man?
What's authentic white guy blues? Like it sounds like
I guess he's friends with lots of black friends. I don't know. That's a fair point, because it is definitely one of those things where it's like you can't really be the original source when you're taking it from somewhere else. You can only be the secondary source at best. But okay, secondary authentic. I guess you stick around for 80 years. You've paid your dues by that point, I'd imagine.
It's like Eminem. He's the real he's the authentic white guy hip hop.
A lot of people would say that is the thing.
Yeah, no, a lot of people.
Debatable,
would also,
but a lot of people would say that. Yeah.
That dude. He's the authentic Pakeha jazz artist. He really pioneered Pakeha jazz.
Yeah, well, the music belongs to everyone, but you do have to be very careful about paying respects to your originators and things like that, I suppose.
Is there
I always get a bit frisky when people get like protective over things like that, because then stuff doesn't grow if you don't like allow. But then at the same time, like, yeah, you don't. There's a fine line between influence and stealing. There is that.
Just the curious, like authentic white guy blues. Like, what is a key theme of authentic white guy blues that you've realized?
I don't know. I suppose so if you sing the meat, like the feeling of the song rather than just singing the song, I suppose goes a long way towards like you're not just a cover band, you're actually like embodying something that has been parallel to the people that came before you, rather than just going through the motions, like Guitar Hero stuff, just playing note for note.
Pushing it forward with respect to the paying homage, but pushing it forward as well. There we go. Rightio. Niche Cage Variety Show, pretty similar to the Aotearoa Sporting Weekend, a bit all over the place, bit chaotic, but we are approaching Matariki. So as we live in tune with the cycles of the universe, Matariki is approaching, and we are embracing a new cycle here. This cycle's coming to an end. New cycle coming up. Big it up to yourself. Raise your mana. Stay beautiful. Chit-chit.